86, Monday, March 2nd, 2026. And of course, we're going to start the way we start all of these bad boys. No one really knows for sure Elu Ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chaim, but this is the Mazor we live by. Zurus, I've got 99 Zerusim, what a bitch ain't one. Means problems, baby. Chilazon, Murex Trunculus, that's that snail. It sounds like a Pokemon. Golus, that's diaspora. Chachma, Bina, Da'at, wisdom, understanding, knowledge. That's Chabad. Chalaf is a knife. Shechita is slaughter. Shochet is a slaughter. Berdika is examination or inspection. Chalaf is the instrument of surgical sharpness used to perform shechita. Halakha, the body of Jewish law. Halakhic, in accordance with halakha, kosher, correct, fit, appropriate, according to the laws of Judaism. Nevela, an animal that was not slaughtered by shechita. Shochet, the person who performs shechita, qualified with a thorough knowledge of Jewish law, animal anatomy, and pathology, and licensed by both religious and civic authorities. Treifa, literally torn, generally used to denote non-kosher food. Zar ba'ale chayim, the Jewish teaching that cruelty to animals diminishes man's own ethical and moral standing, and that it is contrary to Jewish law to cause animals pain or distress. Shochet must be learned in the laws of Kohet at sharpening and polishing his knives or her knives, known as Stellen Chalif in Yiddish. Often, but not always, the shochet is also trained to be a bodek, a checker. Gekaken often yam lech tizdayan. Go piss in the ocean. Gotta do this bullshit. May Hashem bless you and guard you. May Hashem shine his force. May Hashem bless you and guard you. May Hashem shine his face upon you and be gracious to you and grant you peace. Rit Bekar Ivrit Mekrait Afshe Bafol Anaknu Amurim Ladaber Yiddish O Ulai Aramit Shegam Otan Ani Yakol Ladaber Bemida Mezuyamet Aval Ani Ma'adif Anglit Lakin Bo'u Nadaber Anglit Ze Nishma Tov Lekha. Okay. Hava Nagila Ha Nagila Hava Nagila Benismecha Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Benismecha Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Venismecha Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Venismecha Uru Uru Achim Urachim V'lesameach Urachim V'lesameach Urachim V'lesameach Urachim V'lesameach Urachim V'lesameach. Hey, Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Ve'nismecha Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Hava Nagila Ve'nismecha Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Hava Neranena Ve'nismecha Havane Ranena, Havane Ranena, Havane Ranena, Venismaka. Uru, Uru, Achim, Urachim, Balev Sameach, Urachim, Balev Sameach, Urachim, Balev Sameach, Urachim, Balev Sameach, Urachim. Urachim. Balev Sameach. All right, tight. Cool story, bro. All right. Uh, so then there's death. The soul separates. Gehinnom, purification. Gan Eden, initial spiritual reward. Possible reincarnation, spiritual repair. Resurrection, body, soul reunited. Olam Haba, perfected embodied eternal world. Quote, but Rebbe the Chassid replied, to understand gems, you have to be a maven. And to understand neshamas, souls, you also have to be a maven, replied the Rebbe. Every neshama is a gem, for every person's soul is an actual part of God. 5 levels of neshama. There's nefesh, action, vitality, ruach, emotion, neshama, intellect, chaya, transcendent life force, shechita, absolute unity with God. We'll get into that. All right, so for anyone who doesn't know, before the Torah reading, Barak Lifnei HaKaraya, reader calls Baruch Ed Adonai Hamavarach. The congregation responds, Baruch Adonai Hamavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Person called to the Torah repeats, Baruch Adonai Hamavarach. Blessing before the reading, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Asher Bechar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Venatan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. After the reading, Baraka Le'achar HaKareya. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chaye Olam Nata V'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Yore, he may teach, Yadin, he may judge, Yatir Bechorot, he may permit firstborns. Torah is Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim, Genesis, and there's Deuteronomy. Nevi'im, prophets, Yehoshua, Shoftim, Shmuel, Melachim. Joshua, judges, Samuel, kings, louder prophets, Nevi'im, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel, Che'i Asar, Hosea, Yoel, Amos, Obadiah, Yonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Sevaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Ketuvim, Tehillim, Psalms, Mishlei, Proverbs, Eov, Job, the 5 Megillot, 5 scrolls, Shir, Hashirim, Ruth, Ikra, Kohelet, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Divrei Yamim. So that would be Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles. Many contemporary Jewish communities have a special board to whom traveling collectors can present their bona fides, medicals, bills, letters from local rabbis, etc., in exchange for a letter recommendation known as a hamlatza. A shadchan is a matchmaker who suggests prospective marriage mates and then coaches them through the dating process. The term is linked to the word shidduch, which means match. The technical meaning of the word of Aramaic provenance is actually to settle down, since the newly matched couple settles their differences before beginning their new life together. A shadchan can either be a male or female. That's something we have to change on the Chabad website. A shadchan can either be, although a female matchmaker is more properly called a shadchante in Yiddish and a shadchanet in Hebrew, the plural form is shadchanim. In Yiddish, to suggest a shidduch is to read, speak a shidduch. Shadchanus refers to both the act of matchmaking, so that you can say a shadchan is in the business of shadchanus, as well as the money traditionally given to a shadchan for his or her services, which would be accurately referred to as shadchanus gelt, shadchanus money. Title of rabbi's teacher. Musmak is sovereign judicial authority. What did classical smicha actually do? It gave the authority to judge capital cases, authority to impose knassot, authority to establish the calendar, authority, membership of the Sanhedrin, jurisdiction rooted in Eretz Yisrael. Modern rabbis cannot execute, impose biblical fines, declare new months by testimony, recreate national sovereignty law. Musmach is traditional judicial authority. All right. Torah as multi-layered. There's Peshat, that's simple meaning. Remez, hint. Derash, homiletic. Sad, secret. Also spelled court, which refers to the basin or bowl used in Netilat Yadayim ritual, often paired with a cup, Nekelvasser, or Kliat. Kos. Cup is Kos. Kelly. Kelly, but Klee. A Kli Shabbat is a vessel container used on Shabbat. So Kli Sheni and Kli Shel Shiel She. So Kliat. Kli Rishon, first vessel. Kli Rishonim. Kil Rishonim. So there's Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi. Oh, so it's Kli Rishonim. Alright, yeah. That's cool. So there's, we should probably, these are important. Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi. It's super, it's super, superstitious or whatever. Kli Rishon, the original pot or container placed directly on a heat source. Food or liquid in this vessel is considered hot enough to continue cooking. Added ingredients, for instance, spices or salt on Shabbat, which is perfect. Kli Sheni, a vessel into which hot food or liquid can be poured from a Kli Rishon. It is significantly cooler and the risk of cooking is reduced. A Kli Shlishi is a vessel into which hot food or liquid has been transferred from a Kli Sheni. It is even cooler and cooking is generally not a concern. All right, so we did the Sefer HaZohar yesterday. So today is Tikanai HaZohar. Tikanai HaZohar, corrections, rectifications of the Zohar. Traditional attribution, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Historical attribution, likely the circle of Moses de Leon. Late 13th century Spain. Relationship to the Zohar, considered part of the broader Zohar corpus, likely composed slightly later than the main body of the Zohar. Stylistically similar, mystical Aramaic. More systematic and repetitive in structure. Unlike the main Zohar, a flowing mystical commentary on the Torah, Tikunei HaZohar is highly focused and structured. Central structure. The entire work revolves around 70 Tukunim, rectifications, 70 mystical interpretations of the single word Bereshit in the beginning. Even Tikkun explores cosmic, symbolic, and metaphysical. Number 70 symbolizes completeness. For instance, 70 nations, 70 faces of Torah. This is not conventional commentary, it is symbolic expansion. Core themes: language as cosmic code. Every letter contains divine structure. Hebrew letters are metaphysical forces. Words are spirit. Sheet is treated as a map of creation, a diagram of the sphero, divine emanations, a key to exile and redemption. Shekhinah, divine presence, heavy emphasis on the exile of the Shekhinah. Human sin causes fragmentation in divine realms. Mitzvot repair, rectify cosmic rupture. The title Tikkunim reflects this cosmic repair model. Exile and redemption. Deep focus on Galut, exile. Redemption tied to mystical awareness. Torah study seen as an act of cosmic restoration. Strong messianic undertones. Mystical numerology, Gematria. Extensive symbolic readings, letters rearranged and decoded. Numerical equivalences used frequently. Theological development beyond the Zohar. Tikkunai HaZohar pushes further. Stronger mythic structure, more elaborate divine symbolism, more intense focus on Shekhinah. Greater emphasis on mystical Torah study as redemptive act. It is more narrative than the main Zohar literary style. Dense, repetitive, symbolic, less narrative storytelling, more conceptual layering. Mystical Aramaic with Hebrew interwoven, often extremely difficult to follow. Many sections assume prior familiarity with Zoharic cosmology. Halakhic and liturgical influence. Though not halakhic in nature, it influenced Kabbalistic kavanot, mystical intentions in prayer, midnight lament, tikkun chatzot, mystical Shavuot practices, tikkun leil Shavuot, emphasis on Torah study as cosmic repair. It reinforced the idea that study itself repairs divine fracture. Authority and reception, accepted within Kabbalistic traditions, studied intensely by Sfat mystics, integrated into later Lurianic systems, highly revered in Hasidic circles. It became spiritually central despite its complexity. Connection to later Kabbalah, deeply influential in Isaac Luria, Lurianic Tikkun theology, Messianic mysticism, Hasidic spiritual psychology. The concept of Tikkun the concept of Tikkun as cosmic repair becomes foundational in later thought. Length and scope, smaller than the main Zohar corpus, still lengthy and dense, often printed in separate volume. Distinction contribution. If the Zohar introduces mystical cosmology, Tikkunai HaZohar radicalizes the idea that every word of Torah contains infinite layers of redemptive structure. It is less about storytelling and more about metaphysical decoding. Overall importance: Tikkunai HaZohar is a hyper-symbolic mystical expansion of Genesis 1:1, a theology of exile and repair, a bridge between classical Zohar and Lurianic Kabbalah, one of the most abstract and esoteric works in Jewish mysticism. It intensifies the idea that Torah study itself is an act of cosmic restoration. Cool story, bro. All right. Next up, we're gonna get to um, still want to do that on tefillin, but we've got Yiddish to review. I am sick of this. Why? Because it's just whatever. But I'm sure people will fucking love it. All right. Amachai, that is something so pleasurable could bring back the dead. That's what a Rebbitzin says after we shtup. Halavai, if only I wish. That's what she says before we shtup. Yiddish account, Jewish head. Yenta, that's a talkative bitch. That's kind of a fetish of mine. Tachlis, brass tags. Nosh, to snack on something or eating pussy. Basher, that's a soulmate. There's Bashirta, which is a female soulmate. Bashirta, which is a male soulmate. Mishmash, that's a mixture. Bupkis means nothing. Beans. Good Yontif means happy holiday. Mishmash, I was taken aback. L'chaim means to life. Harov means neutral. Glatt kosher means smooth, fit. Mensch, it's a good dude. Mensch, I think, should be a thing for a woman. There's Aishat Khalil. There's uh, Sadakas Froy, perhaps even Gittel. Oive, oh fuck. Stettel, Streimel, that's a hat. Shadel, that's a wig. Milchig, that's very. Fleischig, that's meat. Parv, that's neutral. Heimish or Hamish, that's homie. Shmata, that is rags. Shviger, that's a mother-in-law. Chazir, that's a pig. Chazar, it means to repeat. Schlep, it means carry a burden. Meshuggah, well then carry a gone, that's a thief. Yarmulke, that may be Aramaic for Yare Malka in awe of the king. Word. Trafe, that means torn. Yortzeit, that's death anniversary. Klutz, that means clumsy. Nedalock, that means matzo ball. Schwitz means a sweat. Schnorrer means beggar. Schmutz means dirt. Schmooze means to convince or to gab. Momser means bastard. Benching means blessing. Shadchan. A shadchan is a matchmaker. Uh, our shidduch is the match. Kvetch means the bitch. Shiva means seven. Maven means expert. Shonda. Kids, I owned it was like Shonda.com at one point. Really? Yeah. Shonda, pronounced Shonda, is Yiddish for something scandalously shameful. In Yiddish, the word shand is used for shame. The word shand is used as shame. Is In Yiddish, the word shand is used as shame is used in English. Oh, is used okay. So after shanda takes place, the protagonists of the event may feel that they are being put to shand, to shame. One may refer to cohorts in shameful activity as shander bander. The rhyme gave rise to another little rhyme, shander bander, einer a kapora auf on anderer. A disgraceful bunch each other. While doing shameful stuff is a shanda, shame itself is not bad. On the contrary, our sages tell us that the three hallmarks of Jewish people is that they are merciful, bashful, and doers of kindness. In our daily prayers, we ask God that we do not sin and we not be shamed, not disgraced or stumble for all eternity. Our inborn sensitivity to shame before God is a motivating factor to live good, godly lives. Perhaps it is innate bashfulness that leads us to the expression Ashanda far di goyim, a disgrace before the nations. Jews have long recognized that they are constantly scrutinized by those around them, often being held to a higher standard, as would be appropriate for people chosen by God to be a light for the nations. Representing him and his will in the world, transgressing the Torah or acting shamefully is bad enough, but to do so in public is a double shanda. An interesting and shameful act is that some communities once had a shand klutz, also known as a kuna, a pillory. If you are reading this article, you know that shand means shame, and as you can read here, klutz means wooden block. Hence the shand klutz, upon which wrongdoers would be humiliated. Today, we may look back at those crude implements of punishment and shudder with shand. But who is to say that the current trend of online tarring and feathering on social media, often based on very little evidence, is truly any better? So think about the shand klutz and how Much worse and widespread internet shaming is before you share that juicy Shonda-ridden piece of clickbait. Oh, cool story, Rabbi. Really? Sucks. Everything sucks. I didn't even say 66 days of this bitch, and every single day has sucked. Really? Oh, yeah. And now there's a huge fucking war? Sucks. Really? Do you not like war? No, war sucks. All war sucks? Yeah, dog. All war sucks. Hagba and Galila. I like this part. We have this thing in shul though. It's like it's Velcro, and you're not supposed to tear on Shabbat. And I think that like the microscopic part of tearing Velcro is tearing. And so, how would you do it? I would use magnets. They're like a magnet thing. I think you can use. That's not really tearing.
Lifting up the Sefer Torah is called Hagba, and it reminds us of one of the most beautiful of rabbinic sayings. We think we are lifting the Torah.
And what's the thing? So in the past, it's been like preferred to have big Torahs, big Sephirim Torah, big Sefer Torahs. Um, but now people want smaller ones because Hagba lifting it is pretty hard if it's big.
Torah is lifting us. Rolling up the Sefer Torah is called Galilah, and treating the Torah almost as if it were a person. We put a crown upon it as if to say, this is the word of our sovereign, our king, the word of God himself. To do the Hagbah, we hold tightly onto the wooden handles of the Torah, ensuring the parchment in between is tight and at least 3 columns can be seen. We hold the handles and slowly pull them down the bimah and over the edge so the Torah can be levered downwards. Bending one's knees may help with this. The Torah is kept straight and lifted up high. The Torah is shown to the entire congregation, turning both to the right and then to the left. When the Torah is hoisted, all recite the following. Then the scroll is placed back down on the bimah and rolled closed, with the seam centered between the 2 scrolls. Then the closed Torah is lifted, and you sit down holding it. Somebody else will dress the Torah. Dressing the Torah is called Galilah. First, the sash is wrapped around the scroll. Then, the covering or the mantle is placed over the scrolls so the handles appear through the holes. And then the Torah is dressed with the yad or pointer, and then the crown. The person honored with performing the Galilah kisses the Torah and returns to his seat. The Torah is now ready to be returned to the ark. The person honored with performing the Galilah kisses the Torah and returns to his seat. The Torah is now ready to be returned down on the bimah and rolled closed, with the seam centered between the 2 scrolls. Then the closed Torah is lifted, and you sit down holding it. With the yad or pointer, and then the crown. The person honored with performing the Galilah kisses the Torah and returns to his seat. The Torah is now ready to be returned to the ark.
Cool story, bro. All right, now what are we learning today? Let's get into Esther.
What is Purim? The jolly Jewish holiday of Purim is celebrated every year on the 14th of the Hebrew month of Adar, late winter, early spring. Purim 2026 begins on Monday night, March 2nd, and continues until Tuesday, March 3rd, extending through Wednesday in Jerusalem. It commemorates the divinely orchestrated salvation of the Jewish people in the ancient Persian Empire from Haman's plot to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, infants and women, in a single day. Literally lots in ancient Persian, Purim was thus named since Haman had thrown lots to determine when he would carry out his diabolical scheme, as recorded in the Megillah, Book of Esther. Continue reading to learn the story, observance, and meaning of the Purim holiday. What is the Purim story in a nutshell? The Persian Empire of the 4th century BC extended over 127 lands, and all the Jews were its subjects. When King Ahasuerus had his wife, Queen Vashti, executed for failing to follow his orders, he arranged a beauty pageant to find a new queen. A Jewish girl, Esther, found favor in his eyes and became the new queen, though she refused to divulge her nationality. Meanwhile, the Jew-hating Haman was appointed prime minister of the empire. Mordecai, the leader of the Jews, and Esther's cousin, defied the king's orders and refused to bow to Haman. Haman was incensed, and he convinced the king to issue a decree ordering the extermination of all the Jews on the 13th of Adar, a date chosen by a lottery Haman made. Mordecai galvanized all the Jews, convincing them to repent, fast and pray to GD. Meanwhile, Esther asked the king and Haman to join her for a feast. At a subsequent feast, Esther revealed to the king her Jewish identity. Haman was hanged, Mordecai was appointed prime minister in his stead, and a new decree was issued, granting the Jews the right to defend themselves against their enemies. On the 13th of Adar, the Jews mobilized and killed many of their enemies. On the 14th of Adar, they rested and celebrated. In the capital city of Shushan, they took one more day to finish the job. Read the complete story of Purim. Why is it called Purim? Purim means lots in ancient Persian. The holiday was thus named since Haman had thrown lots to determine when he would carry out his diabolical scheme. You can pronounce this name many ways. In Eastern tradition, it is called Purim. Among Westerners, it is often called Purim. Some Central European communities even call it Purim. Warning, calling this holiday Pyorim, as English speakers are sometimes want to do, is a surefire newbie cover blower. What are Purim observances? Reading of the Megillah, Book of Esther, which recounts the story of the Purim miracle. This is done once on the eve of Purim, and then again on the following day. Giving money gifts to at least 2 poor people. Sending gifts of 2 kinds of food to at least 1 person. A festive Purim feast, which often includes wine or other intoxicating beverages, is here. What are Purim traditions and customs? There is a spirit of liveliness and fun on Purim that is unparalleled on the Jewish calendar. If there were ever a day to let loose and just be Jewish, this is it. Read why here. It is also customary for children and adults, if they desire, to dress up in costumes. Read why here. A traditional Purim food is hamantashen, or osneham poppy seeds, or another sweet filling. Read why here. On the day before Purim, or on the Thursday before. When Purim is on Sunday, it is customary to fast, commemorating Esther's his people. Read more here. When to celebrate. One of the unique aspects of Purim is the diverse timing for its celebration. Common custom, Jews all over the world celebrate Purim on Adar 14, the day when our ancestors rested from the war against their enemies. Walled cities. Since the Jews of Shushan rested one day later, their Purim was deferred to the 15th. This was extended to include any city that was surrounded by walls in the days of Joshua, notably Jerusalem. Small towns. In ancient times, villagers only banded together with fellow Jews in the larger towns on Mondays and Thursdays, which were market days. Thus, the sages decreed that they should read the Megillah on the market day preceding 14 Adar. This custom is no longer practiced. Read more about the days of Purim here. Note that on Jewish leap years, there are actually 2 months called Adar, Adar I and Adar II. Purim is celebrated in the second Adar, but 14 Adar I is still a happy day, referred to as Purim Katan, small Purim. What is the meaning of Purim? Purim means lots. Like a lottery, which is not rational or predictable, Purim expresses that which is above nature and human understanding. In addition to the miracle of Jewish survival despite the efforts of our enemies, Purim celebrates GD's intimate involvement in every aspect of this world. Even though there were no overt miracles recorded in the Megillah, indeed, his name is not even mentioned once. God was actively pulling the strings to care for his nation. Additionally, Haman's edict catalyzed a spiritual revival among the Jews. In a sense, this was even more significant than the covenant at Sinai, an overwhelming spiritual experience that compelled the Jews to accept the Torah, since it occurred of their own volition, even as they were scattered among the Persian people and immersed in their culture. The awakening, that GD orchestrated their salvation. What are other cool Purim facts? All too often, Jewish communities have narrowly escaped catastrophe. More often than not, the plot involves an evil tyrant who follows the ways of Haman. And just like the Purim story, GD is there to save his people from certain doom. Some communities make their own Purim holiday on the anniversary of the date of their respective salvation. Some even read the chain of events from specially made Megillah scrolls. Read some dramatic Purim stories here. In modern times, the plans of some of our nation's worst enemies have been thwarted on this day. In the early 1950s, Joseph Stalin, the ruthless butcher of millions of innocent people, had bloody plans for dealing with the Jewish problem in the USSR just as things were reaching a crisis point in 1953. He died on Purim. Read the riveting details here. In 1990, Saddam Hussein of Iraq defiantly invaded nearby Kuwait. As pressure ramped up from the international community, the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendelssohn, repeatedly assured the people of Israel that they would be protected after the U.S.-led forces attacked Iraq. They were quickly victorious, and the hostilities ended. On Purim, read all about it here. How to say Happy Purim. When Jews meet each other on the joyous holiday of Purim, they greet each other with wishes of Happy Purim. Hebrew, you say Chag Purim, Sami Trited, and pronounce it Gag Purim, Sai, KH. In Yiddish, the traditional blessing is for Afreilichen Purim Righted, and pronounce it Afreilich on Purim. What are other useful Purim links? Click here for our Mega Purim site. Here for a global Purim event directory. Here for Purim FAQ. Here for the story of Purim. Here for Purim insights and inspiration. Here for Purim stories. Here for our Purim Kids Zone.
Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, he was the Ahasuerus who reigned from Hadu to Cush, 127 provinces. 2 In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of
All right, we'll be there in a second.
One. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, he was the Ahasuerus who reigned from Hada to Cush, 127 provinces. 2. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the capital. 3. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a banquet for all his princes and his servants, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the princes of the provinces who were before him. 4. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom, and the splendor of his excellent majesty, many days, 180 days. 5. And when these days were over, the king made for all the people present in Shushan the capital, for everyone both great and small, a banquet for 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's orchard. 6. There were spreads of white, fine cotton, and blue, embroidered with cords of linen and purple, on silver rods and marble columns, couches of gold and silver, on a pavement of green, white, shell, and onyx marble. 7. And they gave them to drink in golden vessels, and the vessels differed from one another, and royal wine was plentiful according to the bounty of the king. 8. And the drinking was according to the law with no one coercing, for so had the king ordained upon every steward of his house, to do according to every man's wish. 9. Also, Vashti the queen made a banquet for the women, in the royal house of King Ahasuerus. 10. On the 7th day, when the king's heart was merry with wine, he ordered Mehuman, Bizitha, Harbonah, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains who ministered in the presence of King Ahasuerus. 11. To bring Vashti the queen before the king with the royal crown, to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was of comely appearance. 12. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's behest, which was brought by the hand of the chamberlains, and the king became very wroth, and his anger burnt within him. 13. And the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for so was the king's custom, to present the case before all who knew law and judgment. 14. And the nearest to him were Karzina, Shether, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face, who sat first in the kingdom. 15. According to the law, what shall be done to Queen Vashti, inasmuch as she did not comply with the order of the king, brought by the hand of the chamberlains. 16. Then Memucan declared before the king and the princes, not against the king alone has Vashti the queen done wrong, but against all the princes and all the peoples that are in all King Ahasuerus's provinces. 17. For the word of the queen will spread to all the women, to make them despise their husbands in their eyes, when they say, King Ahasuerus ordered to bring Vashti the queen before him, but she did not come. 18. And this day, the princesses of Persia and Media who heard the word of the queen will say the like to all the princes of the king, and there will be much contempt and wrath. 19. If it please the king, let a royal edict go forth from before him, and let it be inscribed in the laws of Persia and Media, and let it not be revoked, that Vashti shall not come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to her peer who is better than she. 20. And let the verdict of the king be heard throughout his entire kingdom, although it is great, and all the women shall give honor to their husbands, both great and small. 21. And the matter pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. 22. And he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to every province according to its script, and to every nationality according to its language, that every man dominate in his household and speak according to the language of his nationality. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided the Jewish community with quality Jewish reading since 1963. You'll find an entire Jewish library for yourself, your home and your children. Esther, Chapter 2. 1. After these events, when King Ahasuerus' fury subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what had been decreed upon her. 2. And the king's young men, his servants, said, let them seek for the king young maidens of comely appearance. 3. And let the king appoint commissioners to all the provinces of his kingdom, and let them gather every young maiden of comely appearance to Shushan the capital, to the house of the women, to the custody of Haga, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, and let their ointments be given them. 4. And let the maiden who pleases the king reign instead of Vashti. And the matter pleased the king, and he did so. 5. There was a Judean man in Shushan the capital, whose name was Mordecai the son of Jair the son of Shimei the son of Kish, a Benjamite. 6. Who had been exiled from Jerusalem with the exile that was exiled with Jeconiah, king of Judah, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had exiled. 7. And he had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was of comely form and of comely appearance, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her to himself for a daughter. 8. And it came to pass, when the king's order and his decree were heard, and when many maidens were gathered to Shushan the capital, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was taken to the king's house, to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. 9. And the maiden pleased him, and she won his favor, and he hastened her ointments and her portions to give them to her, and the 7 maidens fitting to give her from the king's house, and he changed her and her maidens to the best portions in the house of the women. 10. Esther did not reveal her nationality or her lineage, for Mordecai had ordered her not to reveal it. 11. And every day, Mordecai would walk about in front of the court of the house of the women, to learn of Esther's welfare and what would be done to her. 12. And when each maiden's turn arrived to go to King Ahasuerus, after having been treated according to the practice prescribed for the women, for 12 months, for so were the days of their ointments completed, 6 months with myrrh oil, and 6 months with perfumes, and with the ointments of the women. 13. Then with this the maiden would come to the king, whatever she would request would be given to her to come with her from the house of the women to the king's house. 14. In the evening she would go, and in the morning she would return to the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, the guard of the concubines. She would no longer come to the king unless the king wanted her, and she was called by name. 15. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, Mordecai's uncle, who had taken her for a daughter, came to go in to the king, she requested nothing, except what Hegai the king's chamberlain, the guard of the women, would say, and Esther obtained grace in the eyes of all who beheld her. 16. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus, to his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. 17. And the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won grace and favor before him more than all the maidens, and he placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. 18. And the king made a great banquet for all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he granted a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the bounty of the king. 19. And when the maidens were gathered a second time, and Mordecai was sitting in the king's gate. 20. Esther would not tell her lineage or her nationality, as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther kept Mordecai's orders as she had when she was raised by him. 21. In those days, when Mordecai was sitting in the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, of the guards of the threshold, became angry and sought to lay a hand on King Ahasuerus. 22. And the matter became known to Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told it to the king in Mordecai's name. 23. And the matter was investigated and found to be so, and they were both hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the diary that was read before the king. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided the Jewish community with quality Jewish reading since 1963. You'll find an entire Jewish library for yourself, your home and your children. Esther, Chapter 3. 1. After these events, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the son of Hamdatha the Agagite and advanced him, and placed his seat above all the princes who were with him. 2. And all the king's servants who were in the king's gate would kneel and prostrate themselves before Haman, for so had the king commanded concerning him, but Mordecai would neither kneel nor prostrate himself. 3. Then the king's servants who were in the king's gate, said to Mordecai, Why do you disobey the king's orders? 4. Now it came to pass when they said this to him daily, and he did not heed them, that they told this to Haman, to see whether Mordecai's words would stand up, for he had told them that he was a Jew. 5. And when Haman saw that Mordecai would neither kneel nor prostrate himself before him, Haman became full of wrath. 6. But it seemed contemptible to him to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him Mordecai's nationality, and Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout Ahasuerus' entire kingdom, Mordecai's people. 7. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, one cast the pur that is the lot before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. 8. And Haman said to King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws differ from those of every people, and they do not keep the king's laws, it is therefore of no use for the king to let them be. 9. If it pleases the king, let it be written to destroy them, and I will weigh out 10,000 silver talents into the hands of those who perform the work, to bring it into the king's treasuries. 10 And the king took his ring off his hand and gave it to Haman the son of Hamdatha the Agagite, the adversary of the Jews. 11 And the king said to Haman, the silver is given to you, and the people to do to them as it pleases you. 12 And the king's scribes were summoned in the first month, on the 13th day thereof, and it was written according to everything that Haman had ordered to the king's satraps and to the governors who were over every province, and to the princes of every people, each province according to its script and each people according to its tongue. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus, and it was sealed with the king's ring. 13 And letters shall be sent by the hand of the couriers to all the king's provinces, to destroy, kill, and cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, on one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and their spoils to be taken as plunder. 14 The copy of the writ was for an edict to be given in every province, published to all the peoples, to be ready for that day. 15 The couriers went forth in haste by the king's order, and the edict was given in Shushan the capital, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, and the city of Shushan was perturbed. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided the Jewish community with quality Jewish reading since 1963. You'll find an entire Jewish library for yourself, your home and your children. Esther, chapter 4. 1 And Mordecai knew all that had transpired, and Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and he went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. 2 And he came up as far as the king's gate, for one may not enter the king's gate dressed in sackcloth. 3 And in every province, wherever the king's orders and his edict reached, there was great mourning for the Jews, and fasting and weeping and lamenting, sackcloth and ashes were put on the most prominent. 4 And Esther's maidens and her chamberlains came and told her, and the queen was extremely terrified, and she sent clothing to dress Mordecai and to take off his sackcloth, but he did not accept it. 5 Then Esther summoned Hadhach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed before her, and she commanded him concerning Mordecai, to know what this was and why this was. 6 So Hadhach went forth to Mordecai, to the city square, which was before the king's gate. 7 And Mordecai told him all that had befallen him, and the full account of the silver that Haman had proposed to weigh out into the king's treasuries on the Jews' account, to cause them to perish. 8 And the copy of the writ of the decree that was given in Shushan he gave him, to show Esther and to tell her, and to order her to come before the king to beseech him and to beg him for her people. 9 And Hadhach came, and he told Esther what Mordecai had said. 10 And Esther said to Hadhach, and she ordered him to tell Mordecai. 11 All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who comes to the king, into the inner court, who is not summoned, there is but one law for him, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king extends the golden scepter, that he may live, but I have not been summoned to come to the king these 30 days. 12 And they told Esther's words to Mordecai. 13 And Mordecai ordered to reply to Esther, do not imagine to yourself that you will escape in the king's house from among all the Jews. 14 For if you remain silent at this time, relief and rescue will arise for the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's household will perish, and who knows whether at a time like this you will attain the kingdom. 15 Then Esther ordered to reply to Mordecai. 16 Go, assemble all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, day and night. Also I and my maidens will fast in a like manner, then I will go to the king contrary to the law, and if I perish, I perish. 17 So Mordecai passed and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided. Esther, chapter 5. 1 Now it came to pass on the third day, that Esther clothed herself regally, and she stood in the inner court of the king's house, opposite the king's house, and the king was sitting on his royal throne in the royal palace, opposite the entrance of the house. 2 And it came to pass when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she won favor in his eyes, and the king extended to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand, and Esther approached and touched the end of the scepter. 3 And the king said to her, what concerns you, Queen Esther, and what is your petition? Even to half the kingdom, it will be given to you. 4 And Esther said, if it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him. 5 And the king said, rush Haman to do Esther's bidding, and the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. 6 And the king said to Esther during the wine banquet, what is your petition? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. 7 Then Esther replied and said, My petition and my request are as follows. 8 If I have found favor in the king's eyes, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and to fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I will make for them, and tomorrow I will do the king's bidding. 9 And Haman went out on that day, happy and with a cheerful heart, but when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and he neither rose nor stirred because of him, Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. 10 But Haman restrained himself, and he came home, and he sent and brought his friends and Zeresh his wife. 11 And Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches and the multitude of his sons, and all the ways that the king had promoted him and that he had exalted him over the princes and the king's servants. 12 And Haman said, Esther did not even bring anyone to the party that she made, except me, and tomorrow, too, I am invited to her with the king. 13 But all this is worth nothing to me, every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. 14 And Zeresh his wife and all his friends said, Let them make a gallows 50 cubits high, and in the morning say to the king that they should hang Mordecai on it, and go to the king to the banquet joyfully. The matter pleased Haman, and he made the gallows. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible. Esther, chapter 6. 1 On that night, the king's sleep was disturbed, and he ordered to bring the book of the records, the chronicles, and they were read before the king. 2 And it was found written that Mordecai had reported about Bigthana and Teresh, 2 chamberlains of the king, of the guards of the threshold, who had sought to lay a hand on King Ahasuerus. 3 And the king said, What honor and greatness was done to Mordecai on that account? And the king's servants who minister before him said, Nothing was done for him. 4 And the king said, Who is in the court? And Haman had come to the outside court of the king's house, to petition the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. 5 And the king's servants said to him, Behold, Haman is standing in the court. And the king said, Let him enter. 6 And Haman entered, and the king said to him, What should be done to a man whom the king wishes to honor? And Haman said to himself, Whom would the king wish to honor more than me? 7 And Haman said to the king, A man whom the king wishes to honor. 8 Let them bring the royal raiment that the king wore and the horse that the king rode upon, and the royal crown should be placed on his head. 9 And let the raiment and the horse be delivered into the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, and let them dress the man whom the king wishes to honor, and let them parade him on the horse in the city square and announce before him, So shall be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor. 10 And the king said to Haman, Hurry, take the raiment and the horse as you have spoken, and do so to Mordecai the Jew, who sits in the king's gate, let nothing fail of all that you have spoken. 11 And Haman took the raiment and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai and paraded him in the city square and announced before him, So shall be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor. 12 And Mordecai returned to the king's gate, and Haman rushed home, mourning and with his head covered. 13 And Haman recounted to Zeresh his wife and to all his friends all that had befallen him, and his wise men. And Zeresh his wife said to him, If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish stock, you will not prevail against him, but you will surely fall before him. 14 While they were still talking to him, the king's chamberlains arrived, and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet that Esther had prepared. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features in English. Esther, chapter 7. 1 So the king and Haman came to drink with Queen Esther. 2 And the king said to Esther also on the second day during the wine feast, What is your petition, Queen Esther, and it shall be given to you? And what is your request, even up to half the kingdom, and it shall be granted? 3 And Queen Esther replied and said, If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases the king, may my life be given me in my petition and my people in my request. 4 For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. Now had we been sold for slaves and bondswomen, I would have kept silent, for the adversary has no consideration for the king's loss. 5 And King Ahasuerus said, and he said to Queen Esther, Who is this and where is he, who dared to do this? 6 And Esther said, An adversary and an enemy, this evil Haman. And Haman became terrified before the king and the queen. 7 And the king arose in his fury from the wine feast to the orchard garden, and Haman stood to beg for his life of Queen Esther, for he saw that evil was determined against him by the king. 8 Then the king returned from the orchard garden to the house of the wine feast, and Haman was falling on the couch upon which Esther was, and the king said, Will you even force the queen with me in the house? The word came out of the king's mouth, and they covered Haman's face. 9 Then said Harbonah, one of the chamberlains before the king, also, Behold the gallows that Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke well for the king, standing in Haman's house, 50 cubits high. And the king said, hang him on it. 10 And they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger abated. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided the Jewish community with quality Jewish reading since 1963. You'll find Esther, Chapter 8. 1 On that day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman the adversary of the Jews, and Mordecai came before the king, because Esther had told him what he was to her. 2 And the king took off his ring, which he had removed from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther placed Mordecai in charge of the house of Haman. 3 And Esther resumed speaking before the king, and she fell before his feet, and she wept and beseeched him to avert the harm of Haman the Agagite and his device that he had plotted against the Jews. 4 Then the king extended the golden scepter to Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the king. 5 And she said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor before him, and the matter is proper before the king, and I am good in his sight, let it be written to rescind the letters, the device of Haman the son of Hamdatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. 6 For how can I see the evil that will befall my people, and how can I see the destruction of my kindred? 7 Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, the house of Haman I have given to Esther, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he laid a hand on the Jews. 8 And you write about the Jews as you see fit, in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring, for a writ that is written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be rescinded. 9 And the king's scribes were summoned at that time, in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, to the Jews and to the satraps and the governors, and the princes of the provinces from Hadu to Cush, 127 provinces, every province according to its script and every nationality according to its tongue, and to the Jews according to their script and according to their tongue. 10 And he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's ring, and he sent letters by the couriers on horseback, the riders of the king's steeds the camels, bred of the dromedaries. 11 That the king had given to the Jews who are in every city, the right to assemble and to protect themselves, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish the entire host of every people and province that oppress them, small children and women, and to take their spoils for plunder. 12 In one day, in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. 13 A copy of the writ was that an edict be given in every province, published before all the peoples, and that the Jews be ready for that day, to avenge themselves upon their enemies. 14 The couriers, those who ride the king's steeds, the camels, went out hastened and pressed by the king's order, and the edict was given in Shushan the capital. 15 And Mordecai left the king's presence with royal raiment, blue and white, and a huge golden crown and a wrap of linen and purple, and the city of Shushan shouted and rejoiced. 16 The Jews had light and joy, and gladness, and honor. 17 And in every province and in every city, wherever the king's order and his edict reached, there was joy and gladness for the Jews, a banquet, and a festive day, and many of the peoples of the land became Jews because the fear of the Jews was upon them. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation. Esther, Chapter 9. 1 And in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day thereof, when the king's order and his edict drew near to be put into execution, on the day that the Jews' enemies looked forward to ruling over them, it was reversed, the Jews should rule over their enemies. 2 The Jews assembled in their cities, in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, to lay hand on those who sought to harm them, and no one stood up before them, for their fear had fallen upon all the peoples. 3 And all the princes of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and those that conduct the king's affairs elevated the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. 4 For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went forth throughout all the provinces, for the man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. 5 And the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword and with slaying and destruction, and they did to their enemies as they wished. 6 And in Shushan the capital, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. 7 And Parshandatha and Dalphon and Ispita. 8 And Poratha and Adaliah and Aridatha. 9 And Parmashta and Arisai and Aradai and Viizatha. 10 The 10 sons of Haman the son of Hamdatha, the adversary of the Jews, they slew, but on the spoil they did not lay their hands. 11 On that day, the number of those slain in Shushan the capital came before the king. 12 And the king said to Queen Esther, in Shushan the capital the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, and the 10 sons of Haman, in the rest of the king's provinces what have they done? Now what is your petition, and it shall be granted you, and what is your request, and it shall be done. 13 And Esther said, If it please the king, let tomorrow too be granted to the Jews to do as today's decree, and let them hang Haman's 10 sons on the gallows. 14 Now the king ordered that it be done so, and a decree was given in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. 15 Now the Jews who were in Shushan assembled on the 14th day of Adar as well, and they slew in Shushan 300 men, but upon the spoils they did not lay their hands. 16 And the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces assembled and protected themselves and had rest from their enemies and slew their foes, 75,000, but upon the spoil they did not lay their hands. 17 On the 13th of the month of Adar, and they rested on the 14th thereof, and made it a day of feasting and joy. 18 And the Jews who were in Shushan assembled on the 13th thereof and on the 14th thereof, and rested on the 15th thereof, and made it a day of feasting and joy. 19 Therefore, the Jewish villagers, who live in open towns, make the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of joy and feasting and a festive day, and of sending portions to one another. 20 And Mordecai inscribed these things and sent letters to all the Jews who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far. 21 To enjoin them to make the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day thereof, every year. 22 As the days when the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month that was reversed for them from grief to joy and from mourning to a festive day, to make them days of feasting and joy, and sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. 23 And the Jews took upon themselves what they had commenced to do and what Mordecai had written to them. 24 For Haman the son of Hamdatha the Agagite, the adversary of all the Jews, had devised to destroy the Jews, and he cast the pur, that is the lot, to terrify them and destroy them. 25 And when she came before the king, he commanded through letters that his evil device that he had devised against the Jews return upon his own head, and to destroy him and his sons on the gallows. 26 Therefore, they called these days Purim after the name Pur, therefore, because of all the words of this letter, and what they saw concerning this matter, and what happened to them. 27 The Jews ordained and took upon themselves and upon their seed and upon all those who join them, that it is not to be revoked, to make these 2 days according to their script and according to their appointed time, every year. 28 And these days shall be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, in every family, every province, and every city, and these days of Purim shall not be revoked from amidst the Jews, and their memory shall not cease from their seed. 29 Now, Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew wrote down all the acts of power, to confirm the second Purim letter. 30 And he sent letters to all the Jews, to 127 provinces, the realm of Ahasuerus, words of peace and truth. 31 To confirm these days of Purim in their appointed times, as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had ordained for themselves and for their seed, the matters of the fasts and their cry. 32 Now Esther's order confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was inscribed in the book. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh. Esther, chapter. King Ahasuerus imposed a tribute on the land and on the isles of the sea. 2 And all the acts of his power and his might and the full account of Mordecai's greatness, how the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? 3 For Mordecai the Jew was viceroy to King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews and accepted by most of his brethren, seeking the good of his people and speaking peace to all their seed. The text on this page contains sacred literature. Please do not deface or discard. Features an English translation of the entire Tanakh, Jewish Bible, with Rashi's commentary. Judaica Press, publisher of Jewish books and software, has provided the Jewish community with quality Jewish reading since 1963. You'll find an entire Jewish library for yourself, your home, and your children.
You fire. Go fuck yourself. Happy Purim, babies.